as Josh and Kevin and myself, as we talk to a lot of people about starting their own business, one of their fears is leaving that known paycheck, and am I going to be able to create income for myself? Can I do that? And that seems to be like where their fear stops. Is, am I going to be able to grow this? Well, we know that they can grow it. But what I like that what you're sharing about is that that taking it the next step. Well, yeah, you may develop an income, but are you protecting yourself in case something happens to that income? And I think, unfortunately, I think a lot of us tend to forget about the what if. So I'm so happy that you're on talking about this today.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of nuance around it, and there's a lot of financial media surrounding these different types of policies, because there's companies that are getting paid, there's advisors that are getting paid, there's money exchanging, and so there's going to be a lot of slants to the information, but we can't let the noise muddy up the signal. And so that's what we're talking about, is pulling out truths that I think are critical when you're evaluating this. And so one of the nice things, though, is that if you've been a therapist for a number of years, oftentimes what an insurance company will do, if you're transitioning into a PT business, they'll say, hey, we'll take a percentage of previous year's earnings and we'll consider that. That's basically their way of saying, hey, the data says, as a physical therapist, as a OT, as a speech therapist, whoever, that you're going to have the capacity to generate the revenue. We just haven't seen it yet. So we're going to give you a little borrowed trust. And then once you start producing it, we can increase the benefit. And again, something is better than nothing, which I think is important to know and to remember. And, you just can't predict what's going to happen. I was just talking with somebody who they're working in the hospital, and not a therapist, but they're working. They saw a patient, a 32-year-old fella. He's going to be a bilateral amputee secondary to COVID complications. There's no way that this young guy out, and he's a runner, ever would have anticipated something like this happening. Those are long odds, but the consequence is significant. And if you're not in a position where something else is paying for that deficit, like, you have to take ownership and cover it. And so I think it really behooves people to evaluate their situation when they're making that leap into generating their own paycheck, that they just make sure they have plans and strategies for the what ifs.
Yeah. How soon would you say that someone start thinking about investing for the what if? Is there too early? Is there too late?
I mean, too late is when you call somebody and you say, what do I do? Because this happened. That's the too late, right? The too early, I don't think there is a too early, especially if you're looking at transitioning into being your own business owner, looking at that. And you might just have to accept that maybe you're not an insurable risk. The other thing about these kinds of insurances that you have to be familiar with is that just because you think you should get it doesn't mean you'll get it. There's an application process. You might have a previous medical history that that prevents you from getting a policy. Like, these companies are running large bodies of data. Your name removed, they're looking at it and saying, who is this person? Male, female, this is the state they live in, this is the previous medical history. How much risk is this for us as a company? Because these policies can pay out significant amount of money. I've seen people permanently disabled, and now this company is cutting this person a check for thousands of dollars a month. So the company does due diligence. And so as far as too early, too late, too soon, it's never too soon to get an initial opinion or a second opinion to make sure that you don't have any risk gaps and you can mitigate those. And then what happens is you just review that with whoever the advisor who got you into that policy. You look at that on a regular basis, maybe annually, maybe every couple of years when your income changes, and make sure that you're still padding that gap. Something else that's important to know is you're never on the hook to keep these policies forever. The goal is to be able to have enough assets, revenue generating assets, that you wouldn't need the policy. And then it goes from essential to discretionary. But I think when you're in a phase where your income is critical, I hate to speak in absolutes because that's just not the kind of person I am, but I would say that gets as close to an absolute need as possible. Exceptions to the situation is if you're in a dual income home and your income really doesn't actually matter in driving in the overall plan of the family. But I think in some capacity it makes a lot of sense to examine that.